All right, Martin Popoff here from the Contrarians, back again with another episode of Reliving Old Reviews as a Useless Tool of Confusion. We are looking at, we basically with the show, we look at reviews of old albums that have become legendary over time and see what the writer thought, boots on the ground, whether they got it right kind of thing. This is a review in Melody Maker, April 17th, 1976 of Kiss Destroyer. What you're seeing with this series, we've got about 70 of these episodes now at this point as I speak. We're covering the same album, 2 or 3 times kind of thing, because we're looking at the review of the album and then commenting on the review. Go check out, we've got half dozen other episodes on various Kiss albums, and like I say, there's even a couple on Alive at this point. Anyways, here we go. This is by HD in Melody Maker, and I'm pretty sure that's the great Harry Doherty, who we've lost recently. We've looked at a lot of reviews from Harry. Harry was a big Thin Lizzy expert. We've got some Thin Lizzy episodes as well. Let's see what Harry has to say about Kiss Destroyer. We should have known that the total eccentricity of approach, the gross makeup, and the blanket heavy metal music would have eventually ensured that Kiss would make it big in the States. We also know from past experiences that what goes for America isn't necessarily the rule in Britain. Good point. There are a lot of bands that are big in America that are not big in Britain. Kiss particularly is not going to be a big British experience. I can think of many, many others. Van Halen comes to mind, Motley Crue. Anyways, he goes, Destroyer is the 5th Kiss album, but only the 3rd release here. The first Kiss, and the 3rd, Dressed to Kill, are its predecessors. Hotter Than Hell and Live, he calls it Live, the double album which established them in their homeland, weren't put out, but the 2 that were did little to push Kiss to the forefront of British rock. Quite frankly, I can't see any finer attributes on Destroyer that will change the situation. Interesting. So we did an Alive episode where Alive was reviewed in June of 76. We're in April of 76. So what Harry is saying is that Kiss is out and Dressed to Kill are out, Hotter Than Hell are not out, and Kiss Alive is not out. So this is like the 3rd album for the UK, and imports meant more back then, right? It was not a digital world. I mean, it literally meant something that these albums were or weren't out in various territories, right? The situation is that the first album is the band's best to date, and none of the follow-ups have come anywhere near it for unrelenting energy. They've tried hard and failed abysmally. As I see it, the trouble is that since that first album, Kiss has fallen over themselves in attempts to recreate the successful atmosphere of their debut instead of using it as a platform from which to progress. And the success of the live album has probably strengthened their conviction. So he knows that the live album has done well in the States. So it's funny, we've got the first album, and now he's going to be talking about Destroyer, which is vastly different and more ambitious than the first album. We've skipped Hotter Than Hell, and logically speaking, he's calling Dressed to Kill a disappointment, and he's not really factoring in Alive here, right? Okay, and so we've got Destroyer, not a bad album. Neither better nor worse than Hotter Than Hell or Dressed to Kill, but continuing to tread a path that will very soon be wearisomely familiar if Kiss don't become a little more adventurous. That's crazy, because obviously this album is extremely adventurous and very, very different than the first 3 as a bank. And it's nuts that he's saying, it's kind of like similar to those, or even similar in quality to those. I mean, I think most fans now, anyways, I think Destroyer is the band's best album or the most ambitious album. But yeah, it's funny he's calling it not adventurous, right? There are 2 tracks on this album which could change that. Great Expectations and Beth both show intelligent and sensitive use of orchestra and choir. Otherwise, Kiss cling to the tried and tested formula. It's evident from the opening chords of the first track, Detroit Rock City, to the close of the last, Do You Love Me? There are driving riffs, hysterical vocals, and predictable chorus lines. Shouted out loud is the archetypical Kiss number, chugging along pointlessly into a shout along chorus line. Obviously, it's the single. And fact is, I mean, he's more or less got it right that when you do zero down onto a song like Shout It Out Loud, it is similar to what they were doing on the earlier albums, and definitely to someone from the UK with Thin Lizzy sensibilities in Detroit. I mean, Deep Purple and Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin. Kiss is going to sound shockingly simplified, I suppose. God of Thunder does offer a little variation, but after hinting at that with a taunting guitar intro, it drifts back into what seems to be Kiss's very narrow terms of reference. Instrumentally and vocally, too, Kiss very rarely break out. Vocalists shout when subtlety is called for, and guitars wail when a softer touch would have done the job much more effectively. There's none of the distinctiveness that has set apart Zeppelin and more recently Queen. Well, yeah, definitely. If you're going to compare them to Queen, Kiss sound like they're drawing with crayons, and Queen's got the drafting table out, right? I don't like what he says about the vocalists. I think the vocals are varied enough and good. No one's ever complained really about Kiss vocals, but he seems to think it's time to complain about Kiss vocals. But yeah, I can understand that. Okay, let's see what he says to close out. On Destroyer, Kiss retread old territory that has been covered so well over the past number of years that their contribution to rock is negligible. And although they do well by all the cliches, their future at the level of staidness displayed on Destroyer can only be brief. Wow. So he says their future is brief. They aren't going to make it, these guys. So yeah, he was definitely wrong about that. But and I like how he says over a number of years, the territory covered over a number of years. It's early 1976, and this band's first album is from 1974, right? So things moved very fast back then when it came to albums. So there you go. And yeah, it's kind of weird that he's like, oh, I love Great Expectations and Beth, right? It's so he's saying these two mellow tracks are greatness of some sort, right? So yeah, I think this review from Harry kind of misses the mark. Harry's usually pretty smart on stuff, but yeah, he's generally reviewing the UK bands, and I guess this really hasn't translated for him in a good way. So there you go, Kiss Destroyer. Please like and subscribe. Like I say, I've got Kiss at 50 still available. You can order that from me. I sign them, send them out from my office here in Toronto. And if you join our Patreon situation, that gets you access to being on our panels. We do a lot of panels, and Marco sends out a nice list of things you can join and talk about, so you could be on our Contrarians show. And Patreon's like $3 a month or something like that. And yeah, we've got merch and all that stuff. But yeah, like, subscribe. We want to get those numbers up. There you go, Kiss Destroyer.